Now, let's get started with the show and the reason we're here today. We have a wonderful guest joining us today, Steve Eggert. He's a financial advisor with Edward Jones, and we're going to have a discussion that centers around retirement planning for you as a business owner and your employees. So, Stephen, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, I know you've got a background, a lot of information. Let's kind of start out and give the listeners a little bit of background on yourself. What brought you to the point you are as far as being a financial advisor with Edward Jones?
Good question. Thank you much. My story is one of sort of life coming full circle, probably the best way to describe it. You mentioned those wild inflationary times of the late 70s, early 80s. That's as I was beginning my matriculation through college, ending, of course, through the mid-'80s, coming out in that Ronald Reagan era, and sort of being born into a new era of business, if you will. From there, I ventured, of course, into the world of finance, specifically commercial real estate investment finance, and I didn't necessarily anticipate that it was going to last as long, and it ended up being a 10, almost 12-year career. It really helped build a family, build a household. My wife and I got married late 80s, 1989. In fact, she began a career in insurance, and off we went. Lo and behold, a company restructuring, like I said, 10, 11 years later, led to a decision on our part to collectively venture away from what we were doing and become teachers of the subject matter that we had spent the early portion of our business career in. So I became a high school and community college business educator and finance educator. I didn't necessarily anticipate that was going to take me on a 20-year journey, but it did. 20 years later, my wife and I, again, sort of an ironic twist. We're, of course, educators in California, and we had the opportunity to, turn the page to a new chapter and, in essence, not retire, but venture on into a new chapter, a new occupation. I made the decision at that point to get back to what I was doing previously and get back to the world of practicing as a practitioner. That led me to Edward Jones. But uniquely, it also gave me the opportunity to venture into the world of what I like to call retirement finance. Because in California, as a public educator, you can actually begin collecting a pension at age 55, and that's what my wife and I did. So we took what we were learning and are learning and bringing to our clients, and we forged a career out of it. She's also an employee of Edward Jones as well. So long story short, that's what brought me to Edward Jones. 32 years of life in the world of business and finance, enjoying it. I was always that go-to guy at family functions, at the teacher cafeteria at school, where people were coming to me with their 457, 401k, 403b questions. What should I do? And heck, I was doing my best, but again, I was an educator, not a practitioner. This move now to Edward Jones has given me the opportunity to do what I've always wanted to do, of course, which is, again, become that legal practitioner, that licensed practitioner, and really working with clients, household, family, friends in the world of finance and helping them walk the journey that my wife and I have been proudly walking for some time now.
Now, is Edward Jones what brought you to our area here in Montgomery County?
Absolutely. I didn't necessarily anticipate. I had looked at several firms, and several firms had bona fide opportunities for me. Edward Jones had an opportunity, but it was here in Montgomery County, and that's where I started. I began my training, of course, here in the city of Conroe. It took me to a office location in the Woodlands for a period of time, and once a new branch opened up off 1488 in Kirkendall, right across from the HEB, Edward Jones offered me that opportunity. I jumped at it because it was the unique opportunity for me to run a branch, my branch, a home I could call my own, our own, and really create a sense of home, being for my clients. They love stopping in. And so, yes, to answer your question, came here for family, because my wife's family, she, of course, having been born here in West Texas, it gave us the opportunity to come back. Come back to them. My family had always and still lives in Southern California, but it was a unique opportunity for us to again turn the page, come back to them, while at the same time, of course, forging it with our final chapter in our career path collectively, she and I.
Well, that's a great story. You really do. You have a great business story and how you've leveraged what you started out with, so to speak, in finance, but absolutely in a different field of finance. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really a cool story. Well, before we run out of time here in our first segment, let's kind of jump into some of this retirement. I guess focus on the owner. Right. My experience in my practice of the last 17, 18 years working with small businesses as an advisor, consultant, and then being in small business all my life, small business people tend to, for the most part, think of their retirement as their business. In other words, I'm going to sell this business. Now, I may sell it 2 or 3 different times. I've jumped to other businesses. I had 5 businesses that I owned. Mm-hmm. But the last one is where we're going to leverage. And when we sell that, it's going to produce the nest egg, if you will. Mm-hmm. We don't think about any other avenues to prepare us financially for retirement. I personally think that's a mistake. So talk to us a little bit about why the small business owner needs to prepare themselves beyond just their asset, their main asset of their business.
Well, that's a good question. And here's the reason why they need to prepare themselves. They need to prepare themselves because, as you just mentioned, relying on the asset value, the termination value of the business, or in other words, what you think you can get for it at about that time that you're ready to retire, we tend to underestimate the time that it's going to take to get that business sold, and we tend to overestimate what we're going to sell it for by at least a multiple of 2 in both instances, coming and going. We tend to underestimate. It typically takes 5 to 7 years to prep an asset for disposition and then ultimately to close on that asset, where you can ultimately bring those assets into, let's say, for instance, a retirement account, a non-qualified retirement account. And of course, we tend to, and again, I'm not disparaging small business owners. I come from a family of small business owners. As a youngster, I went through this with my father and uncles who were business partners and very much struggled with this topic. We tend to overestimate by a multiple of at least 2 what we think that we're going to get or pull out of that business upon exit. Typically, we will sell these businesses to a family member or a key employee, and what we're doing in those instances, we're taking on the credit risk of the family member, the key employee, an uncomfortable credit risk, and quite often we're also taking on the cash flow risk of that business as well. Can it, in fact, afford an annuity-ish like payout to the person, of course, who is doing the selling? And it's an infringement on the cash flow of the business as well. It really can be restrictive from the perspective of, hey, I'm paying out this payout to my father, who I've taken this business over from, and it's really crimping my ability, of course, to buy this, to expand my plant, to buy this new piece of equipment, a new marketing campaign, take on more people, et cetera. So it's treacherous, but it can happen. And that, of course, is you can force savings, discipline, in a disciplined fashion, while at the same time, of course, running your business. There is room in cash flow for that to happen. I watched it. I watched my father's business afford the lifestyles of 3 families, 3 large families, while at the same time, at the very least, contributing to a traditional IRA for all 3 of them, and then retirement plans beyond that. Didn't quite get them where they thought they needed to be, but it somewhat came close. There are ways in which we can do it. It all depends upon, and I can expand into this answer right now, or I can wait a bit, but there's 2 ways really you can do it primarily. Does your business have employees, or are you a sole practitioner?
Right.
No employees.
Well, Stephen, we went to break. We just kind of got into the general subject of how it's possible to do retirement planning outside of the value of the business. You brought up some really good issues that potentially can, I don't want to say reduce the value of the business, but what we hope it'll be 20 years hence or 10 years, 30 years, whatever it is, and what we're able to pull from it to retire many times is not what we thought. One of the things I do with people, I will meet with entrepreneurs, people aspiring to go into business, and just give them an hour's time, and we'll talk about. And one of the things one of the three foundational elements I talk about is exit strategy. And a lot of times they just look at you and say, well, wait a minute, why I'm just beginning. Yeah. Well, you need a simple exit plan, right. And they can be very simple, which I won't get into today, but then you use that to guide you, right. To increase your chance of getting where you want to be. Mm-hmm. But there will always be changes, maneuvers. One of the things I like about individually of doing some traditional retirement planning financially is that the risk is much lower, that I will be able to get what I expect or what I need, what I want, mm-hmm. what my family needs. It's like you put that together with what you think you're going to cash out in the business, and you reduce your risk that you won't get right. where you generally want to be. And that, to me, is an important factor. Mm-hmm. Because why work in a business for 20 years, take all those risks that are associated just with being in business, and then not get the payoff at the end mm-hmm. that you were working for? Right. And you're right, it happens much too often. Right. So let's talk about the retirement programs or what's available and what should be considered by the small business owner for him or herself and their employees.
Good. As I mentioned before, think about it this way. The corporate employee has that 401k, that great, like I like to call, forced savings vehicle. What does a small business owner have? The small business owner, believe it or not, again, there's four main types, but has that same opportunity to force savings. It's not all about tucking away my $6,000 or $7,000 per year into a traditional IRA, and that's the best I'm going to do. No. Again, whether you have or you don't have employees, there are programs available to you. If you don't have employees, there is something what we call the owner's 401k, also known as the solo 401k, solo K, if you will. That allows the business owner, who of course is wearing the same hat as the key employee or sole employee, to save amounts significantly above what the traditional IRA would allow them to, both, of course, as a portion of the profits made from the business, as well as traditional 401k-ish style income deferral, salary deferral. So, of course, there is that immediate tax benefit up front, and then, of course, there is tax-deferred growth all the way through the life of the owner K until the person beyond age 59 and a half elects, of course, to begin taking withdrawals, at which point, of course, there is typical government taxation at the ordinary income tax rate. So, beyond that, though, of course, there's also for the sole proprietor with no employees, there's also something called the SEP. It's an acronym for Simplified Employee Pension. That allows the business owner, as sole proprietor, to save amounts in an income deferral fashion below what you can within an owner K. It really has to do with what's the person's goals, and gets back to exactly what you just brought up, which of course is hey, there's no better complement to the volatility of the value of a business, and let's just face it, it is volatile, than the dollar cost averaging nature of forced savings that a SEP or an owner K allows you to do. Conversely, if your business has employees, there's two main plans, of course. There's the traditional 401k. That can, of course, be set up at any time under any circumstances, almost. Then there is something called, and this is a funky, long-winded acronym, it's the Savings Incentive Match Plan for Employees. Just remember the acronym's simple. It allows you, much like a SEP, to save smaller sums of money, but of course it includes the employee contribution factor, of course, and that gets to a larger discussion. Now all of a sudden we've ventured into the world of retirement savings for employees, matches if you will, that allows us of course to create that sort of hook for employees that you want to bring in and a hook, of course, to keep them with you, retain those key employees. So these 4 plans, the SEP, the Simple, the Owner K, and the 401k, they're there. Very, very easy to establish. It simply takes additional assistance in the form of a financial advisor when it comes to investment selection, and typically something we call a TPA, a third-party administrator, to make sure that all paperwork, especially IRS mandated paperwork, is done, is completed, and filed on time. But there are options out there that can do exactly what you just said, allow the business owner to complement the exit value of his business with the forced savings and lower volatility of a structured, goal-oriented retirement plan.
The whole concept, as I said earlier, makes a lot of sense to me for my family as well. And I participated in the type of planning. I have a SEP and did that, not to the extent I wish I had, because the contributions you could vary each year, but simply because it's been a ready source of cash in and of itself, and the business interest is being paid out, which is fine, and I have confidence that, but don't know that I will get paid in full. One of the things that's interesting to me in working with businesses is, and I hope people hearing this will really get it, is the type of programs that you're talking about, providing retirement savings for employees. These are really important, and many times I find, small businesses don't have the vision, I guess is what it is, to realize they can afford to do this. But more importantly, particularly when we have times like we have now, where it's almost impossible to hire people because of the labor market, we're in just a real funny way, that these are the kind of things that will attract not just people, but the best people. And that was my goal when I hired. I want the best people available at that time. Another thing, a health savings account, not to get off of that, but in my consulting, I had 2 different clients who did the retirement and the health savings account and provided the health insurance and whatever. They had almost no turnover. I mean, and if they made a good hire, those people were there 10, 15 years. And small business people sometimes are a little nearsighted. So, again, back at you, to have this type of program in place like you're talking about, one of the variables there, one of the types of programs, small business owners, it can make a huge difference in your business.
Absolutely.
And where you go with the business, and not to prolong this, but at the end, when you want to exit and you want to sell the business, either to family or to a strategic buyer or another type of buyer, your business is going to be more valuable because you've got a nucleus of great employees.
Exactly.
And it does increase the value. I assure you that, because I've been there, done that. I've worked with other people as they sold their businesses, the same thing. So you're building value on the other side of this equation. In our 2-prong approach to retirement, I'm making my business asset more valuable.
Correct.
So
absolutely. And you brought up a key point here, not mean in any way, shape, or form, and that is the emergence of the HSA, the health savings account. It's that that Roth-ish IRA form of triple tax savings, being able to build significant savings to funnel towards health-related and medical-related expenses in retirement in a very meaningful way that gives you such awesome tax benefit going in and coming out. That is, without question, part of this conversation. Officially on the retirement side, not necessarily, but it's becoming part of it. It's becoming part of the menu. And don't forget 529s. Education funding accounts, not just for the business owner, but for the employees as well. That's something for a very, very, very low cost can be established for the business. Again, another hook. Think of the menu that people are expecting, great employees are expecting these days. What are my 401k options? What are my retirement plan savings options? What are my HSA options? What are my 529 options? And if you can roll out that menu, you're going to bring that key employee to the table, and you're going to keep them there. And that's that human asset that termination value is built off of.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
There's just no doubt about that. And the other thing I mentioned, if folks haven't noticed it, is the fact that the big businesses, you look at the ones in the news, Amazon, all these companies, immediate health benefits the second day you're there or something. I've seen these ads. I mean, not only are they raising their wage, if you will, de facto setting a level for minimum wage in this country without the government involvement as well.
Yeah.
But they have these benefits. And when you look at them and you say, gosh, if I'm trying to hire out of the same labor pool, you know, again, the biggest fear I have for small business people is they start wringing their hands and they don't pay attention. And something I mentioned in my opening question is they're reacting to things and they got to step back. And I encourage all the time, one of my main messages, think about what you're doing. Lots of information available. People like you as a resource
Yes, sir.
of how to build, right? Build a program that will allow you to hire, and once you've hired them and for the right people, they will stay, and you can encourage them.
Right.
I've got experience that's taught me that. As I mentioned, I had 2 different people I consulted with, and it was just, they were above all my other clients. And I had some outstanding business people, outstanding businesses, but these people kind of were in a class of their own as far as their employee asset.
Right.
So very interesting.
Right.
Let's shift gears just a little bit.
Sure.
You moved here to Montgomery County, and your office is down in what I guess they call Magnolia,
Almost.
Almost.
Still Conroe address, but right there.
right across the street from the Woodlands, right?
Exactly.
People like
Yes,
to
sir.
say that. It's interesting. Montgomery County, I think we're blessed to be here.
We are.
Regardless of our backgrounds, our abilities, our strengths, weaknesses, this is an unbelievable growth story. I grew up in Harris County, as a lot of the listeners know, watched it grow and boom. But Montgomery County is Harris County 20 years ago, maybe 30. Real estate, always one of my things because that's my background as well. Commercial real estate is just popping up everywhere. It's a barometer for me. What do you see going forward? You have business clients. How are they doing? What does the future look like, regardless of what's going on a national level for your business clients here?
That's a great question. You know, I assuming, of course, we can get past the current climate in 2 to 3 minutes, which typically we can, because business owners have a growth-oriented mindset. Otherwise, what compels them to get up each and every morning? My business clients, once they can get past the daily logistical issues that are keeping them up at night, in other words, inventory, supplies, supply chain issues that are those things that are keeping them up at night. And once they can get past the little employee nuances that, of course, every business owner in good times and in bad has to deal with, they see a bright future ahead. They have been here. They have been here for the decades and have seen the decades-long growths, whether it's in the form of a roadway that's simply being expanded or another neighborhood that's going up. They see the opportunity because they see a growing tax base. They see a growing population. They see growing real estate assets, commercial, of course, and residential. They see a very solid, responsible, growing multi-tenant residential base as well throughout the county. And that says to them, I've got a customer base that is going to sustain itself and it's going to grow over time. So in the business clients that I deal with on a daily basis, the underlying theme there is sustained, long-term confidence. It's there. And honestly, I've preached to my former students as a business and finance educator for almost 20 years at the high school and community college level. Live in the path of growth. Wherever you're at, ultimately find and work your way towards the path of growth. The path of growth in this country, in my opinion, I'm 58 years old, so I'm not the oldest guy out there, it begins here in the state of Texas, in the great state of Texas. And if I were to choose a county, I'm going to choose Montgomery County. This is where it begins.
And I guess that's the reason for the last couple of years, city of Conroe in its size cities has been the fastest growing
Yes, sir.
in America, which is very interesting. Well, Stephen, we've pretty much run out of time in today's program. Love to have you back down the road and talk a little bit more about retirement and programs for small business owners. In the meantime, if people want to reach out to you with questions or talk to you about some programs, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Always feel free to give me a call. I love chatting with my customers and prospective customers. 936-273-3161 is my phone number at my branch. And, of course, email Stephen, S-T-E-P-H-E-N, the way my mother decided to spell Steve, .Eggert, E-G-G-E-R-T, at edwardjones.com. And, of course, you can always track me down at edwardjones.com. Just search on Eggert, E-G-G-E-R-T, and I'll come up as the guy in Conroe.
Well, again, I can't thank you enough. You've got a lot of wisdom in there, a lot of good ideas, I think, that can make a business a better, more solid, sustainable business for the business owner and their families.
Got it.
So, well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the bottom of the hour. I hope you'll stay with us. I want to let you know that a podcast, video cast of today's show will be posted after Wednesday of this week on our website at 1bestconsult.com or here at the station of Lone Star Community Radio or all over social media out there, Facebook, YouTube, etc.
OneBestConsult.com, a community of small business owners where you as an owner can find answers to the most pressing business questions you have. Not sure who to turn to when you have a challenge in your business? Turn to the folks at OneBestConsult.com. That's the number one, bestconsult.com, where you can always find advice you can use based on common sense business experience. Join our community of like-minded business owners at OneBestConsult.com.